All right, here we're going to be learning about angle relationships. So you've heard the word relationships before. You have a relationship with your family, you have a relationship with maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It just describes how you're connected to that person. This is kind of the same thing. You're just describing how two angles are related to each other or how they're connected to each other. So we're going to be learning about 4 different words that describe angle relationships. Before we get into that, we have to talk about just how to talk about one angle. An angle is a figure that's formed by 2 rays or lines that meet at a common endpoint known as a vertex. So this is the vertex in that picture, point R. The 2 rays are these 2 lines. Starting at R, going to Q, we could call that ray RQ. We call this one RS. Just describing it by those 2 points that actually form that line. It's going from R to S or R to Q. The angle itself is the space in between those 2 rays. So it's not either line, but it's both of them together, and it's the space that's in between. It's that pizza slice that's created by those 2 lines. So we have 3 different ways that we can actually label this specific angle. We could also just call it just angle 1 because it's labeled that way. But we can name it by the points that form it. So we can say this is angle QRS. Or we can go the other direction. It really doesn't matter which direction we go. We can say angle SRQ. The important thing is that it's formed by all 3 of these points together, making that little slice there. And it's the space that's in between that we're really talking about. It's that rotation between this line to that line. All right, so we have these 4 angle relationships that we need to learn about here. The first one is adjacent angles. So adjacent angles are just angles that are right next to each other. That's the simplest way to say this. They're angles that are right next to each other. A more specific way to say that is that they're 2 non-overlapping angles that share a common side and a common vertex. So I'm going to show you what that means in this picture. We're looking for an angle that's adjacent to FHG. So FHG is this angle. It's a right angle right there. We're looking for an angle that's right next to that. And it's going to share a common side. When I say a common side, I really just mean this ray in that angle. It's got to be a part of the other angle. So I'm actually going to call this one the adjacent angle. I'm going to say that angle GHI, this angle, is directly adjacent to this angle FHG. They're just right next to each other. That's all that means. We didn't have to use that one actually. We could have also used this other right angle on the other side. We could have said angle GHJ. Those are also just right next to each other. They share a common side here and a common vertex, which is the point in the middle. All right, now we're looking for angles that are adjacent to angle 6. This is angle 6. The ones that are right next to it are angle 5 and angle 8. Angle 5 is this angle. The shared wall between, or the shared common side between angle 5 and angle 6 is this side here. This is angle 8. There, the shared side is this side. They have one line that's in common between 2 angles. Vertical angles are kind of the opposite of adjacent angles. They're non-adjacent angles that share a common vertex. Vertical angles are always equal in measure. You may also hear the word congruent. Those mean the same thing. Congruent is our geometry word for equal. So they're going to be directly across from each other. You're always going to see this kind of an intersection, and they're on opposite sides of each other. So angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical, and angles 2 and 4 are also vertical. They're just directly across from each other. We also know that they're the same. So let's say I said that this was 95 degrees. I could say that this is also 95 degrees. It's kind of what example 4 is talking about. If the measure of angle 2 is 40 degrees, what is the other angle that measures 40 degrees? Well, it's going to be the angle that's directly across from it. It's just going to be angle 3. That's also going to be 40 degrees. Next word is complementary. So complementary angles are angles that have a sum of 90 degrees. 27 plus 63 equals 90. These two angles are complementary because they add up to 90. So here I want to name a pair of complementary angles. You might be thinking, well, that is clearly a right angle, so that's got to be a complementary angle, but that's not really true. Complementary angles is talking about two angles that add up to 90. That's just one angle by itself. I'm looking for two angles that are put together to form a right angle. These two angles put together, this angle and this angle, together they form that perfect corner. That is 90 degrees. That's really what I'm looking for. So I'm talking about angles F, oh sorry, not F, GHI. GHI is that one. And IHJ is this one. Those two together form that right angle or add up to 90 degrees. If we know one of the two angles, then we can work backwards and figure out what that missing angle is. So if I know that these are complementary, so they add up to 90, I could say that 75 plus x, or x plus 75 equals 90, and then I could solve for that remaining part. It's just the leftover part after I take away that 75, which means that has to be 15 degrees. This little circle that I'm putting above these angle measurements stands for degrees. Last one is supplementary angles. So two angles that have a sum of 180 degrees. So here we have 60 and 120. They add up to 180. So we could say that they are supplementary. So complementary forms a perfect corner. Supplementary is going to form a straight line. We're going to have two angles together that make a straight line. So I want to think about what two angles would add up to that straight line going from F to H to J. There's some options here. I'm going to say this is my first angle. And I'm going to say this is my second one. That one plus that one. Together, they form that straight line, which means they have to add up to 180. So angle FHI, FHI is that one, plus IHJ add up to 180, so they are supplementary. On example 8, we're told that these two angles, H and S, are supplementary, so they add up to 180. What's the measure of S? Well, I know, actually I'm going to label this as X. I know that they're going to add up to 180, so I'm going to say X plus 35 equals 180. I'm really just finding the leftover part that gets me up to 180 with that 35. So I'm going to do 180 minus 35 to find out that that angle has to be 145. All right, those are all of our angle relationships. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to actually set up equations and solve for some missing angles.